Okay, so your English is pretty good. You're working in an English-speaking country and everything seems to be going well. However, you don't feel comfortable with your colleagues. You think they misunderstand you. How can you better integrate yourself in your new workplace and your new society? We'll try to help you with this in this episode of
Aprender inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hello, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it up to the next level.
So if you are a new listener, welcome to the podcast. And if you've listened before, welcome back. How are you, Reza?
I'm very well, Craig. I'm enjoying this time of year. It's spring and I love the weather. How are you?
Very well, thanks. It's been a really, really good week and I'm pleased to be podcasting again with you. What's first this week?
Let's get down to business. We got a voice message from Jose from Seville, or Sevilla, as you say in Spanish.
Hi guys, this is Jose from Seville. First of all, thank you so much for your excellent work. I am listening to you 2 months ago and I always enjoy a lot with your podcasts. They are very professional and interesting. Every day I learn something new and you are really helping me to improve my English. I wish your podcasts weren't so cool, so I could do another things instead of listening to you. I'm becoming an addict of it. Please, I have a question. Can you explain the difference between raise and rise? Sometimes I can't understand it very well. Well, guys, big thanks again for your fantastic work. See you.
Thank you, Jose, for sending us your voice message. It's wonderful to hear from you. We haven't had a message from an addict for a while, Reza. What do we call people who are addicted to this podcast?
Yes, if you're addicted to Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig, AIRC, you are an alcoholic.
So Jose's an alcoholic, I think, from his message, listening to us in an addictive way. What is the difference between raise and rise?
That is a good question. It's a mistake which I often hear. I bet you do as well.
Yeah, confusing those two. Well, raise, R-A-I-S-E, must have an object after it. So it's a transitive verb. On the other hand, rise is intransitive. So it does not need an object. For example, the sun rises every morning. I don't say rise the sun, so there's no object after rise. However, if I lift up the table or elevate the table, I can say I'm raising the table or I'm raising the temperature in the room. So after raise, you put an object.
So you're saying that something raises something. You raise the table. You lift up the table.
Exactly. Something must raise something, but something rises.
So those are the verbs, Jose. By the way, they can also be nouns. The noun rise, R-I-S-E, has a general meaning. For example, there's been a rise in crime recently. Or crime has risen, you could say, with the verb. But the noun raise, R-A-I-S-E, it has a specific meaning. It means an increase in salary. For example, my boss offered me a raise, quite a lot of money. So he offered me specifically more money. That's a raise.
I don't know if you agree with me here, Reza, but I think that rise is more common in UK English and raise in American English when we speak about salary. So I'd get a raise in America and I'd get a rise in salary in British English. Does that sound logical? Or
Yes, but for me, in British English, when people say the word rise, they normally say a pay rise.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so common to hear just a rise.
That's true.
You normally hear about, I'm going to offer you a pay rise. It's not so common to hear, I'm going to offer you a rise. It usually is preceded by pay rise, just to make it clear.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, it's true. They don't say raise so much in British English. They'll say pay rise.
I think we should get a rise in salary. I think we need a rise.
Yes, because zero is not a lot of money, which is how much we earn from the podcast.
No, I mean our teacher's salary. We should get a rise from our school. One thing about rise and raise as verbs that you should notice, Jose, and other people interested, raise, R-A-I-S-E, is a regular verb. So raise, raised, raised, just ed. However, rise is irregular. So the infinitive is to rise, R-I-S-E. The past form rose, R-O-S-E. And the third form risen, R-I-S-E-N. Prices have risen recently.
Craig, there's something I think we should raise, an issue we should raise.
Raise an issue.
You can raise an issue. That means to bring up, to introduce into a conversation. We should raise the issue of people who want to have a teacher, but they aren't able to go and travel and find the teacher in another place. What can they do?
Well, I'm pleased you've raised that point, Reza, because that's a very good point to raise. Yes, if you have questions like Jose's about rise and raise, for example, wouldn't it be nice if you had your personal private teacher who could answer these kind of questions? Of course, Reza and I will try to answer these questions for you if you send them to us, but wouldn't it be nice if on a weekly, regular basis you had a teacher who could answer your questions and help you with your English? Well, why not try our sponsor, italki? italki is a website that will help you find a teacher that you like to study with, and on a one-to-one basis, face-to-face over Skype, you can speak to your teacher and that teacher will help you with your English. What do? You go to the website, you register, you choose your teacher, you schedule your first lesson at a time and a day that's convenient for you, and then you connect with Skype and you have your lesson. If you'd like more information, go to inglespodcast.com/263, click on the italki link, and italki are offering a $10 credit when you sign up and pay for your first lesson on Skype. Thank you very much, italki, for sponsoring this podcast.
Well, Craig, let's go on with a little bit more feedback. This time, an written email from Luigi. Shall we read it out, Craig?
Yeah, this is what Luigi says. He says, "Hiya, how you doing, guys? It's been a long time since the last time I wrote to you." Very good use of the present perfect there. Well done, Luigi. It's been a long time since the last time I wrote to you. So let's get to the meat and potatoes. There's Luigi using an expression we've used in the past, to get to the meat and potatoes, to get to the real important content, the important stuff. Luigi says, "As you might know, I've been living in London for 1 year and a half. Better to say 1.5 years, Luigi, for 1.5 years. After a tough year working hard, I finally got promoted as an events assistant last month. Congratulations. But I'm on a month's trial. I have a huge problem. Because I lived in Spain for over 14 years, I've become like them. Let me express myself. I mean, I'm a direct person. And, as you know, in this country, in the UK, you should behave the opposite. Besides, I'm still doubting my level of English. I can't feel comfortable working in the office. My colleagues are the most understanding people in the world, and they support me in everything, but I think I come across as being arrogant, rough, and with no sense of humour because I can't understand their jokes, and that makes me feel apprehensive because, trust me, I consider myself the other way round. Definitely, I've decided to change my behaviour, otherwise I will never match at the office. I think you mean fit in. You will never fit in at the office. I hope they bear with me. So guys, I need your suggestions. What can I do to soak up the British culture? And this phrasal verb that Luigi used, soak up, means absorb, like you'd soak up liquid that you spill on the table, absorber, to soak up the British culture. Which series would you recommend to me? Songs, jokes? I wish to get on with all of them, all the people in the office. Thank you guys in advance. All the best, Luigi.
So Luigi wants to get on with his workmates. To get on is to have a good relationship. Well, that's a tricky question, isn't it, Craig?
It is. What do you think?
Well, Luigi, you can't please everybody, and that applies to all countries. So maybe you need to find your tribe. What does that mean, Craig? Find your tribe.
Find your tribe, el tribu. Find people that you enjoy hanging out with. To hang out means pasar el rato. That's one thing I wanted to mention about Luigi's email was he really uses a nice selection of phrasal verbs. He said to come across as being arrogant. To come across, the phrasal verb means the impression you give. So he thinks he gives a rough and arrogant impression. I'm sure that's not true, but that's how he thinks he comes across. And he uses soak up, as I said before. So a really nice selection of phrasal verbs in his email. Find people that you feel comfortable being with socially. So there must be maybe one person in the office that you could invite for a beer or a drink after work, go and have a chat, have a social drink with one or two people from your workplace, and then try to expand that group with people who you feel comfortable with. That might not necessarily be the whole office, everybody, but just try to find a small group that you feel most comfortable with and socialize with those people. And what made me think of tribe was my friend David Palencia, who has a website and a podcast over at daweingles.com. There's a link to his website in the show notes. He speaks a lot about tribes, and that's how he, as a native Spanish speaker, became really comfortable with English. And now he teaches English because he found a tribe of people in the UK that he socialized with and worked with and became very, very close friends with. And that really helped his English and his absorption into British culture.
We've put in the show notes, in answer to Luigi's questions, some links about TV series which are very well known, very popular in the United Kingdom. It's probably best if you just have a look at the show notes. So go to inglespodcast/263 and you'll see some suggestions. I'm sure you'll have heard of some. For example, you may have heard of The Office. That's a very, very well-known series from a few years back, but it's still popular.
Yeah, be careful with that one, though, because there is an American version of The Office which won't help you culturally with integrating into British culture. You want to watch and listen to the original Office with Ricky Gervais. And that gives a very good idea, I think, of how British office culture is. Even though it's a comedy, it's quite a realistic scenario of how people interact at work and British humour. That might help you to get on better and connect with people in your office environment.
Another funny series is The Royal Family, but that's spelled Royle. So not the Royal Family, like the King and Queen, but the Royal Family. It's their name. And it's a comedy, but it does reflect realistically what happens in a typical kind of working class or lower middle class kind of average British home.
Kind of reflects my home life growing up, just the family sitting around the television speaking and watching TV, and that's all we did So it is quite culturally British and very significant of how some working class families behave in the UK.
Some of you, particularly older listeners, might well have heard of Faulty Towers. Faulty Towers, that's Fawlty, Faulty Towers. It was the name of a hotel, so the owner was Mr. Faulty, and he was a slightly eccentric British hotel owner who just always got into trouble. But the great thing about it for foreigners is that it gives you an insight, it gives you an idea of what British people find funny, the kind of situations, the funny situations that make us laugh. People often say that the British have a very particular sense of humor, which isn't quite the same as some other European countries. It's not even the same as the Americans, and we speak the same language. We have our own particular sense of humor, and that's very apparent in Faulty Towers.
And in Monty Python, that's perhaps more, how would you describe it? It's humor that's a bit more abstract, perhaps. Abstract sense of humor, maybe. So it's humor that Reza and I both grew up with, and it's not a situation comedy, but it does give you an idea of what some British people find funny.
Yes, quite often British people laugh at things which aren't overtly funny, but it's just the absurdity, the absurd situation, the unlikely chance that such a situation would arise, and people trying to act in a normal way in a very, very surreal or unreal situation. We find that funny. That's a very typical thing in British culture. And Monty Python and Faulty Towers, which both star John Cleese, the well-known comedy actor, they portray that sense of laughing at the absurd very well.
And there's another one that I recommend because it shows a Britishness that I kind of identify with, especially when British people travel abroad, and that's An Idiot Abroad, which also is written by Ricky Gervais, but it stars another person. So that does remind me very much of many British people when they travel and they are confronted with other cultures. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was really funny.
It reminds me of my brother-in-law. He's very similar to that. When he comes up against and he sees different cultures, he rejects it immediately. Yeah.
Another one which is very particular, we might call it a niche, Niche. It's very particular. A comedy which is more recent. I don't know if it's still running on TV now, but recently it was, called Benidorm. Have you ever seen that?
I have, yes.
I quite like it. I said it's very niche. It's very specific because it's specifically about British people's lives, but obviously in Benidorm. So British people who live in Spain, in their British... Well, some of them live in Spain. Some of them are on holiday in a hotel. And their life in Spain. So although all of the action happens in Benidorm, it's all in English and it's about British people, and they live a very particular lifestyle. They somehow bring a lot of their Britishness with them to Benidorm, and they don't seem that adapted to Spanish culture. It's just very funny.
It is. I will add that to the list over at inglespodcast.com/263. So there's lots of homework for you there, Luigi, to watch those if you haven't seen them already, and hopefully they will help you. But it is a difficult problem. Reza, I don't know if you agree, but maybe it's not Luigi's. I don't think it's Luigi's problem. I think it's the people he's working with.
It could be, or certainly it could be a mixture. So Luigi, don't just think, oh, I must be strange, or I mustn't understand British culture because I don't seem to integrate so well with my workmates. Maybe it's them more than you, because many people do believe, many foreigners do believe that it's quite difficult to get to know British people. Maybe the British are not known to integrate with other cultures so quickly. They're quite reserved, they're quite reticent, and maybe we, British people, maybe we don't make it easy for you. It could be us more than you.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's got more to do with the people in your office not being open to your culture than it has to you integrating into theirs.
I mean, I don't want to bore you with something that we keep hearing in the news all the time these days about Brexit. Let's not get into the politics. But the basic idea that a country, well, a slight majority of people in the country should vote to be less integrated in Europe, that is what happened in Brexit. People voted to be less integrated. Not everyone, eh? Only about half, slightly more than half. But hey, half is a lot. So think about that, Luigi.
Reza, did you have a similar problem of integration when you first came to live in Spain?
Yes, I did. But I think on the whole, Spanish people made it very easy for me. I think in a way, it's easier for a British person to come and adapt to Spanish life than for any type of foreigner, Spanish, Italian, Indian, Japanese, to adapt to British life. I have the feeling it's easier in Spain than in the UK. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So I'm really not speaking about the language now. I'm speaking about the point when we both could speak Spanish fairly comfortably, but then still felt a bit uncomfortable sometimes culturally when we were in Spanish company. I can remember that. And to some extent, I don't feel uncomfortable now because I've been here for over 20 years. But I do feel there is a cultural mismatch, which means that culturally, and as Luigi said, with sense of humor and jokes, sometimes I don't get the sense of humor. I don't understand the sense of humor. And there's some things missing culturally that are there when I'm with people from the UK. And I think that's normal. I don't think it will ever be the same for me. I'll always feel more comfortable with people I grew up with in the UK than Spanish speakers, even though I have many Spanish friends and I've been here for over 20 years. Is that how you feel?
Actually, it isn't. I wouldn't use for myself the word more comfortable, but I would say easier. But I don't consider them the same thing. Yeah, it's easier for me because I grew up in the United Kingdom, in Northern Ireland, to feel quite at home in British culture. I guess I'm lucky because I'm from Northern Ireland, and so I'm also used to Irish culture, which is very similar but slightly different to British culture as well. So I feel it's easier for me to be in that type of culture. However, I do feel comfortable in Spanish culture. I feel that I know enough about it that I don't need to be worried. So it may be easier for me to know exactly what to do in British culture, but I don't feel uncomfortable in Spain. I just maybe have to think about it a bit more and think, now if these were British people, I should react this way, but they're not. They're Spanish, so then I have to do it that way. It's a bit different.
Yeah, maybe comfortable's not. I don't feel uncomfortable. Maybe I should correct that a bit. I don't feel uncomfortable when I'm with Spanish speakers, but I do feel more at ease when I'm with English speakers. Even with American speakers, I feel maybe it is the language. Now I think about it. Yeah,
I think the language plays a large part because I must admit, and I say this as a British person, I've said that I could call myself Irish as well. Yes, true, but I am also British. I find many native English speakers from other countries easier to be with in a way than the British. Australians, Americans, Canadians, New Zealanders, they seem to find it easier to put other people at their ease.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, and we're speaking the same language, but the different countries. I don't know, maybe it's just a tradition or a cultural thing in the UK for some people to be just quite reserved. Mm-hmm. Not impolite, not rude, not unfriendly, just reserved.
So Reza, we've spoken about sense of humor being something that could possibly prevent successful integration. What other things, apart from language and obviously sense of humor, could prevent someone integrating into other cultures?
Well, in all cultures, but British culture gives it special importance. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, class,
Yeah,
social class.
definitely.
I think in British society, social class is still very evident and still very important. I wish it weren't, but it is. And there are some people who aren't so keen, enthusiastic about mixing with people from other classes. So you might have the double problem, perhaps, of being a foreigner. And if they think that your social class is a bit below or above theirs, and they're not happy with that, that could be a problem as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And that's definitely something that comes across. Where's that come across again? That phrasal verb. Something that comes across through accent. I think people tend to put you in a class group depending on how you speak English, especially if you're a native speaker. So the words you use, your accent tends to put you in a particular social class. What about food? Do you think food is a factor?
It does inevitably have an effect. Not the most important factor, but a lot of British people are happy with traditional British food and they don't like that fancy foreign stuff.
Fancy foreign stuff.
You know, like all this stuff with olive oil everywhere and red wine sauce and garlic. They're just happy with fish and chips, and you can put a bit of salt and pepper on it, and that's enough. And
My mum hated olive oil, especially on bread. She had to have butter, only butter. But I love Spanish food, but British food for me is comfort food. If I have a bacon sandwich or a roast dinner or particular cakes or pastries that come from UK, then I feel completely at home, completely comfortable with it.
what would you say about Indian food? Would you say it almost forms part of British culture now?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, some Indian dishes that are quite famous were invented in the UK. Yeah, definitely.
So it's strange. A lot of people will have their traditional English fish and chips, the steak and kidney pie, etc. But they're also happy with a chicken tikka masala. But give them, steak tartare or some strange Spanish dish they don't know, and they're not so happy about that.
Let's talk a little about globalization, because that could have an effect. Do you think different cultural identities are being watered down, which means diluted by globalization?
Yes, I think it's inevitable, but you know what? It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it has advantages and disadvantages, but it certainly is happening in this global world of telecommunications, so many different types of media. It's so easy to listen and see and even visit things from other countries, other cultures so easily. It's inevitable that it's going to affect your own culture, I think.
I can see the bad sides to it, but what do you think of the positive aspects?
Adopting things from other cultures. If you think that in other cultures they do something in some ways better than you do it, why not adopt it? Why not?
Yeah.
I think all countries to some extent have done that. They probably don't like to admit it. People don't like to admit it. They have national pride. But I think we have, secretly recognized that other cultures do some things better than us. Look at the English and the French, for example. There's a rivalry which goes back a long way there. Yeah, English and French. But I know that a lot of English people secretly or maybe even openly really admire some things about France.
I'm one of them. I still like it when France loses at sport, but I really admire the country. I love the food and I love the language and the culture and the history. But there is this rivalry there between France and the UK.
I mean, long before technology became as widespread and important as it is now, I mean, English cuisine, look at the word cuisine, has been heavily influenced by France. Half of the words are French. You can have a jus, you can have a creme brulee, a cuisine.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. We
Oui,
can't
oui,
deny.
oui.
Croissant,
Bien sûr. Anyway, Luigi, we do sympathize. I'm sorry we don't have any concrete, definite answers for you on this question. All I can say personally to sum up is try and get a handle on the sense of humor. To get a handle on something means try to find a way into the sense of humor, start to feel comfortable with it. Try a few jokes, even if they're bad jokes. Maybe they'll laugh at you trying to make jokes, and then that will bring you more into the cultural group. And also try to socialize outside of the office with some of the people that you feel you have more of a connection with in the office. And gradually with time, you'll integrate more and more. So keep trying. And we feel for you, because Reza and I have both been through this adaptation period. Just keep on doing what you're doing, and it will get better in the future. Any last comments, Reza, for Luigi and anybody else in this situation?
Just keep on trying, and who knows, you might get to the stage one day, which I have got to, perhaps Craig as well. Sometimes now when I go back to the United Kingdom or Ireland, I feel at home in many ways, but then there are some things which surprise me about my own culture, because I've now spent so much time in Spain that I've kind of forgotten that when I go back to my home culture, oh yeah, they do it differently here, and it shocks me, and I think, oh, they do this much better in Spain.
A bit like Moses, a stranger in your own land.
That might happen to you someday. Then you know you're well integrated into a culture.
What's your opinion? Are you going through a similar adaptation period as Luigi? If you're listening to this and you can identify with this problem, please let us know. Send us a voice message. You can do that using the SpeakPipe app. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Reza, what about emails?
You could email Craig. He's at craig@inglespodcast.com, or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
If you're interested in studying with one of our online courses, go to store.mansioningles.net and download one of our courses from our online store. Before we go, we'd like to say thank you to all our patrons. Their names are on the website, inglespodcast.com. Special thanks to Bruno, of course, our gold sponsor, who offers walking tours of 2 cities, Copenhagen in Denmark, and those tours are in English and Spanish. The website for that information, copenhagenwalkingtour.com, and also tours in Rio de Janeiro, the favela district of Rio. Go to favelawalkingtour.com.br for more information on that. And thanks, Bruno.
You could be a Patreon sponsor, just like Bruno. For as little as $1 a month, you can get instant access to recent transcriptions, which, as always, are transcribed by Angelica. Thanks, Angelica. If you're interested, just look at patreon.com/Inglespodcast. And for as little as $1 a month, you can join our long list of Patreons. We're not going to read out that long list, but I will read out the most recent sponsors who recently joined. Thanks very much to our new supporters, Jaime Gallego, Kende Aparecido Osiro, Dani Palacios, Javier Roig, Jose Ignacio, Ile Champs, and Ramon Roldan. Thanks very much to you.
Yeah, thank you. On next week's episode, we're speaking about baby vocabulary. So if you have a baby, if you're going to have a baby, or if you were once yourself a baby, we hope you'll find next week's podcast interesting. Thanks for listening this week. Until then, it's goodbye from Reza.
And bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.